this is how I see addictions, and I'm going to ask you to consider this view. It's not the right view. It's a view. There are other views that are useful, important, and maybe more suited to you. That makes sense? Like, I think in the field of addictions, in my view, in other fields also, but in the field of addictions, there's so much we still don't know. Because people are suffering like hell. And there's lots of really great ideas, but there's a lot of people who aren't getting helped by all those great ideas. So there's a lot to learn still. That's how I think. So that means if you have a new model, bring it forward, because we need information and we need new thinking, we need new approaches. So I'm going to offer you one approach. So let yourself, if it's right for you, try that on. And if not, argue with me, so to speak. You know what I mean? Debate with me, disagree with me is also really good. I think of addictions as a path. One path. You may have other paths, but it can be but if addictions is the center of your life, like this is what I'm wrestling with my whole life, then addiction is going to be central to your path. What do I mean by a path? A path means this thing called addiction or an addictive tendency is going to be part of the center of my life. I'm going to be navigating through it, around it, against it, for a lot of years, maybe my whole life. Now, I say the word path because some people would say, no, addiction is something to get over so I can get on my path. I understand that view also. But I want to ask you to entertain the idea that it's part of a path. I'm not pro-addiction, but I'm pro-path. Okay, so what if you're on a path that's yours, and addiction may be part of your path or central to your path, even if you don't use any substances and you're just wrestling with that, it's part of your path. Even if you say, David, do you have any addictions? I say, no, I love alcohol or smoking marijuana or whatever it is. Listen to this answer. But I only do it twice per month. That's an addictive tendency. Why? Because otherwise I don't say twice. A person who says I do it twice, I do it once a year, is a person who's managing. I'm not saying it's bad, right? Because they're not having the health problems and all those kinds of things. If I'm smoking marijuana once a year, doesn't sound like a big deal. And it's not, so I don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, let's fix this person, what kind of difficulties is that person having. But if I say I only do it once a year, that means I'm managing something. I'm managing an energy. Remember the dream thing? And I'm having to figure out what the hell do I do with that energy? How do I wrestle with it? What do I do those other 364 days, etc.? So addiction is a path, and it has, and like any path, it has gifts and riches along the way. And there are many, but 4 of them come to mind, and I'll do my best to get to the 4, but maybe we'll get to 3. One is connection to pain and suffering. All paths have genuine paths, meaning authentic, right? If you just want to accommodate and be the right person, you may have suffering also, but you may not know it, depending on the person you are. But all genuine paths have a certain amount of pain and suffering in it. If you're going to be yourself, something's going to not be so easy for you. If you're not going to be yourself, other things will not be so easy. You get the idea? So there's going to be some pain and suffering, and then how you relate to that pain and suffering is going to be really important. How do I relate to the fact that I'm in hell in certain ways? Remember, Steve offered us some ideas yesterday. I look into your eyes and I say, I need your help. Right? I'm really suffering. That's one way of doing that. But the expression of those pains and sufferings is really important. And often compassion comes out of that. If you develop a relationship with your suffering that has some kindness to it, you'll probably become relatively self-compassionate and other compassionate. Most people do. Does that make sense? I know what it's really like to suffer. I'm not only in a fight with it only. I kind of get it. I've sat in it. I can do something with it. I can hang with this to some extent. Then when you tell me you're suffering, I'm probably going to be able to hang with yours also. If I haven't, it's going to be difficult. And I'm probably going to care for it. If I can weep for myself and weep for you, that's not a bad quality to have. Okay? So pain and suffering is on the path. The other thing that's on the addictive path is needs. Needs that are so damn potent, I might be willing to die for them. Because if I'm putting a needle in my arm that I could OD on, some part of me knows that I could die. And some part of me says, I don't give a shit. That's ignorant and stupid and unhealthy, And think about how powerful that need is. Not for the substance, but the need that's driving it. Does that make sense? I'm not pro-substance, but the need behind it. Remember Steve was talking about needs before. If I'm willing to risk my life over and over, that's a damn powerful need. I'm willing to die for that thing. That's a damn powerful need. Okay? Need. So it has suffering and compassion comes out of it, the need or a hunger, which is a central life force. Addictions, like other paths, have powers in them. And when you're on a path, you'll have to wrestle with the question of, do I have power? What are my powers like? Is it a flower power that's just tender? Is it a muscle? Is it a crane? Is it a Tai Chi smooth movement? What does my power look like? Because you're going to need some. Because if you're going to be on an authentic path, you're going to come up against something at some point. And you're going to need to figure out, what do I have in me? Maybe my power is surrender, and I'm willing to lay down and say that's okay. But you have to know something about your powers and find those so you can access those. And if you're on a genuine path, you will have to wrestle with the question of, what is my power? How do I access it? Am I free to use it? What happens if I hurt people with it? What do I do with this thing? Should I disown it? Because I don't ever want to hurt anybody. If you've been hurt by people young, I was hurt by my father and brother. I wanted nothing to be like them. I never wanted to use a belt to hit a child out of violence. Ever. But, I'm not into hitting children with belts now, but my father had a fist that he wanted to smash something with. If I disown the whole thing, I might walk around a little bit too powerless. I might need a smashing capacity. He didn't learn to use it very well. Make sense? Dad learned to use that fist and belt somewhere. One time, I was working with a counselor, Max, a Swiss counselor, kind of a sorcerer in a way, and I was telling about my father's violence, and I said, when we would go somewhere, we'd drive in a car, and if my father got stuck at a red light, his irritation would grow, and if somebody said something to him, you could get a hand. So it got really scary. You can follow? Here comes all this anger and rage, and you'd have to sit there kind of like, and shut the hell up because something could happen. And Mark said to me, oh, your father was stuck at a red light his whole life? Yeah, he was stuck at a red light his whole life. Does that make sense? That doesn't mean he should hit children, right? It means he should have gone through the red light. He had a life, he thought this is how I'm supposed to be no matter what, and he couldn't break through from that. So the way he uses power, not so good, but he has power, needed to use it, needed to learn to use it. And if I am going to take my path, I'm going to have to wrestle with that power. What am I going to do with that thing? Hopefully I can go through some red lights and not have to be violent to other people. That would be better. But I'm going to have to wrestle with the question of power, right? Suffering and compassion, need, power, and then there are gifts. On a genuine path, you find gifts. This is the kind of thing I have to offer. I'm like this kind of person. I can give this kind of thing. I have this kind of sensitivity, this kind of shamanic capacities, this kind of love, this kind of intelligence. So, and I think that addictions are a doorway to learn about those, and I'm hoping I'm going to help you learn about those. What's good about those? It can help you relieve the pressure of using a substance because you can access those particular qualities without a substance. What's better than good? Your path. Your path is better than good. I'm saying the path is more important than the substance problem. That's what I'm saying to you. Now, you could die from a substance problem, but I would say, yeah, you could die from a path problem because people are willing to die for it. People are willing to die for it. Does anybody want to say anything that makes sense? Do you want to disagree about something? Being an authority, I think, requires a certain responsibility. That means to remember that I'm not the only authority. Does that make sense? Especially being more or less white and more or less male. That makes it more important because that means that I'm sorry?
Back down, white man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. You see? There's already a sisterhood growing around that.
The matriarchy is right.
Yeah, because part of what allies with me to be here is white maleness. It's not the only thing. I have my own strengths and talents, and I've earned things, but it's made it a little bit easier for me to get here. Does that make sense? So that makes it it's given me a little shtup. You say, go ahead, you can do it. People will more or less get along with you. They'll think you're an authority. You're more or less, you got a penis, you look like a man, more or less. That's cool, you know, right? You're more or less white. That's going to be easy in a mainstream culture. So go ahead, put yourself out there. But if you're like a queer black woman, it's going to be in a mainstream culture. It's going to take a little bit more to get yourself out there. Maybe a substance could help. I shouldn't be too light about the substance, but you get the idea? I might reach to a substance to do that if I can't muster the energies to do that. I worked with a queer black woman once who was a cocaine user, and she talked about feeling really down in the world and put down, and it was hard to come out, and all kinds of difficulty that she was suffering. It wasn't only about race and gender and homophobia, but partly. I'm not saying that's the whole story, but it's partly her story. And I said, what's it like when you do cocaine? She said, nothing can touch me. Can you feel that? Nothing can touch me. That would be a pretty yummy feeling given how she experienced life. That's a pretty damn yummy feeling. And if I'm going to help her with the cocaine, which I would really like to do, meaning help her loosen her grip on that because I don't want her to die, I might want to have to figure out, if I take her seriously, how is she going to feel a little bit more indomitable in the world? And that's not going to take a week. That's going to take some time, depending on how difficult that is. And she's going to be up against things that may knock her down, and how's she going to deal with those things, et cetera. Does that make sense? So then the addiction problem for her becomes very much an empowerment problem. And I have to be gentle around my understanding. So I have to say, hey, let me help you and help you figure everything out. And 3 weeks later, you can't stop the addiction. She can't stop the addiction. Then I should know, David, you know how long it's going to take for her to get over the conditioning that she has in terms of presenting herself as a powerful, indomitable woman in the world? That's going to take a while. The addiction might slow down over time. It could take months or years for that process. I'm taking the shame off it, you see? If I put the shame on it, how come you can't get over that thing? But if I'm the person helping her, then I should know, David, easy for you to say. You go out in front of people and people kind of go more or less, okay, we're open to you, but she's not. Can you follow how gross? Then she should say to me, you're an asshole, right? Maybe for you it's easy to come out, but you know what it's like for me? Don't give me your, I should get over this thing quickly and what's wrong with me thing. Because what's trying to come out of me requires a fair amount of steadiness in the world. And you've got some advantages around that, maybe because you're a child or whatever. I worked with a woman who was a smoker years ago, maybe 15 years ago, and her mother died of lung cancer. Her grandmother died of lung cancer, smokers. She was smoking. She's like, this is deadly, right? This is deadly. I'm scared about my health. So I said to her, let's find out why you're smoking. She goes, well, I know I'm smoking. I just smoke to relax and take it easy, and it's a nice break from the day. Not true. Why? Remember Steve talked about those deeper needs? Most people are not in touch with the deeper needs of why they're doing things. We walk around semi-comatose, no? Is that okay to say? No, I don't know. People are unconscious. I'm unconscious about things. So I said to her, here's a cigarette. I gave her a pen. I like pens. I said, and I'm going to have a cigarette, my pen. I'm not going to give her a real cigarette because I'm not interested in promoting her smoking, but I am interested in knowing what she's doing. I said, okay, you put that cigarette, light it up, and teach me how to smoke the way you smoke. I'm going to talk about in a minute what shame has to do with this, but this is a shame-free intervention. Because I'm not saying, oh, smoking's bad, you should stop smoking. I'm saying, I want to know what you're up to. I'm not pro-smoking, but I'm pro-you. And I think you're doing something, and I think you're probably doing something intelligent. And I think there's probably a need in the background, and I would like to know what that is. And I'm not sure you know what it is yet, but let's see. So she takes this, and I said, okay, and you smoke, and then teach me. She goes, well, first I do, and she didn't know. She goes, I said, oh, what'd you just do? What did you mean? So what'd you just do? Teach me. She goes, well, you puff, and then you inhale. I said, great, got it, understand, right? And I said, and then what? She goes, I don't know. I go, go ahead and continue smoking. She goes, like, whoa, that's cool. She says, what? I said, well, you paused. She said, oh yeah. I said, why you paused? Why don't you just go? She says, and she puts her hand like this. She goes, well, I'm waiting to feel this feeling in my chest that I get when I'm smoking. Far out, great. And then what happens? She goes, looks good already, doesn't it? I'll tell you more smoking stories. Not everybody smokes for this reason. There's many different reasons. I said, now let's take them one at a time. Tell me, describe what I'm doing. I now smoke like she smokes. She says, I'm taking it in deeply. Then what? I pause. I'm waiting till I can feel it right here in my chest. And then what? Then I'm giving it out. I'm giving it back. And I said, what's it like to take things in deeply? Feel them in your chest. Wait till you feel them and offering something back. She starts weeping. Nobody ever does that. Nobody takes me in. Nobody really listens to me. No one has exchanges where they really speak from their heart and take you in and really listen and speak from what they have to say and what they feel about that. Nobody ever does that, she says. I said, is that important? She says, it's what makes life worth living. That interaction. Do you see why she would die to smoke? Smoking is not a stupid thing for her. There's an intelligence behind it. Not the cigarette itself, but the need in the background. She's saying, this is what makes life worth living. If I have a few years left, who cares? At least I'm getting some living life. Does that make sense? Taking the shame off. I'm saying this is like something that's real inside this human being that I want to understand. If I understand that, then I can say to her, as I did, why is it so difficult to do that with people? Well, I work at an organization where people don't do that, etc. Do you want to continue working there? Or is there another place to go? I can't leave just yet for 6 months. Okay, 6 months later she leaves, leaving her job as part of her smoke ending program. Then I have friends. But it's very difficult to say things to them like, really listen to me, take me in, wait a second, can I tell you the deepest things? How come? I'm awkward about that. It takes a year to learn how to be more open with people. That's a period of time. That's her smoke program. It has to do with relationship, like we were talking yesterday, in connection. It has to do with leaving work. It has to do with the way she wants to interact with people. And until she can do that, it's going to be difficult. She still may be able to get rid of the cigarette slowly or entirely, but it's going to be difficult to. And I'm going to understand why it's difficult to. And I'm not going to look at her like, what's wrong with you? How come you can't get off smoking? I'm going to look at her and say, oh my gosh, something is worth doing to feel alive in you. And I love that about you, and I value that about you. Does that make sense? I'm an ally to the smoking hunger, not to the cigarette. I'm an ally. And when I work with her, I'm going to say, tell me your deepest feelings. And I'm going to wait a while when she says things. And I'm going to offer her what's really deeply inside of me. Why? Because I want her to find out what it's like to have an ally that's not a smoker, that's not a cigarette. Does that make sense? I want her to have an ally of that. I'm going to pull the cigarette away, then she needs a better friend. The cigarette is not a good friend, but it is a friend. Don't forget that. A friend in that sense, that it's like, I can help you get what you need. That's not a small thing. It's cool that you can do that. No, it's cool. Shoot. All right. I'm in an inner conflict. Something says, that's enough talking, help people work on something. But then I want to talk about what shame is and what it has to do with it. But I think I'll bypass that and talk about shame later in a more detailed. I want to explain what I mean by shame in a specific. But for now, take the idea that, can you see or feel how what I'm saying take shame off the problem? It may take 2 years. It may take 3 years. What are you doing that's intelligent? You're not a screwed up, idiot, broken person. You're a powerful, interesting, gifted, amazing creature who's looking for allies to be themselves in a place in an inner world or outer world that's not so easy. That's an attitude. And I want to know about you. And if you're a smoker, I don't assume I know what you're doing. And if you're putting cocaine in your bloodstream, I don't assume I know what you're doing. I assume I have to listen to you and find out. That's what I mean by shame-free. And I make the assumption, not that you're a screwed up person, I make the assumption that you're doing something intelligent, that I need to get to know, and you may need to get to know. And some people say, wow, but that could take a long time. In 15, 20 minutes, I could learn more about most people's addictions than they know after 30 years. How? By taking shame away and kind of going, so can you explain that to me? What is it like? What's it like? And when you are high, what's it like? And when you drink, what happens to you? Go inside and tell me what changes and what it feels like. Sing me the song, play me the music. It doesn't take that long. Why is it so radical and rare to do that? Because this is my bias, because much intervention is shame-based. What's wrong with you? And I'm trying to fix you because something's wrong with you. I'm not trying to discover who you are. Does that make sense? I'm trying to fix you. Many interventions, not all, so I'll try not to be so one-sided, but many interventions treat difficulties like a pathology. You have an illness. And I look at you as having an illness. That's one perspective. It can be very useful. Sometimes I'm sick and I get an antibiotic and amen, I'm glad I do that. I'm glad that it can help me. So I'm not against it, and sometimes it's very important to say, you have an illness, correct that. Sometimes that's just the right medicine. But often it's not. Often that viewpoint never excavates those deeper things that are on the path that you're on. And sometimes it reinforces that sense of, I'm a screwed up, broken person who can never get change, and I can't get off it, and I can't make the change, and I can't stop whatever it is that I'm doing. Does that make sense? That pathology, I call that pathologization, which is not a word, meaning to look at someone as if they're screwed up. That's a really common thing. And when people come to me as a therapist, most people come to me with that attitude. I'm like this, I'm doing this, et cetera, and have a list of reasons. They have an interpretation of themselves. They're not here saying, I smoke and this is what I'm up to. They're saying, I'm bad and I'm stupid and I'm unhealthy. I can't believe I'm still doing this. My grandmother died of this. What's wrong with me? That's good that it gets them there, right? That they're worried and they're concerned. I'm for that. But that attitude itself doesn't think that anything is happening here that I should discover. And if addiction is going to be part of a person's path, maybe lifelong, I sure would like to help them learn to live that path well, if I could.